Iran, that was amazing. And since we don't have a taste here, I can testify that I had some of Nutella spread with Dumatok, and that was even better than the original. So it's definitely the sweetest company in our portfolio, and we are very glad to see the progress Dumatok is making. Our next speaker is sort of a magician, I would say, because what BlueNalu is doing is if you would, Lou, correct me if I'm wrong, but 10 years ago, if you would tell someone about the possibility of doing what you're doing at BlueNalu, they would look at you as a weirdo, as a wacko coming out of nowhere. That is totally science fiction. So what BlueNalu is doing basically is growing fish without hurting the environment at all. And Lou's going to tell us everything about it. I want to share, and as our tradition here in the developing tradition in this webinar, we're going to ask you one question that will be answered throughout this presentation, and that is, on a yearly basis, what do you think? How many kilograms of seafood per capita we are consuming in the world? So take a moment to answer the question. Those of you like salmon might raise the numbers a bit, but that's okay. We will analyze it well. So let's give it 10 more seconds. Please click your answer. All right, let's see the results. All right, somewhere between 10 and 20. Okay. Lou will give us the answer in a moment. So Lou Cooperhouse, the CEO of BlueNalu. Lou, tell us how you do your magic.
Hey, thank you, Alon, and thank you, our crowd, for this seminar today. I have a 35-year background in the food industry and proud to be a co-founder and CEO of BlueNalu, and excited to talk to you about what I feel is one of the most promising technologies in the food industry today, intersected with one of the most challenging issues in our food industry. In fact, the most variable and vulnerable supply chain, in my opinion, on the entire planet, which is seafood. So for those who aren't familiar with cell-based seafood, as Alon described, we also call it cellular aquaculture. It's the ability to actually take cells directly from fish and actually create seafood products from them. In the end, providing consumers with great tasting seafood products, healthy for people, humane for sea life, and sustainable for our planet. Very briefly, what we're doing is we're isolating cells, muscle cells, fat cells, or connective tissue cells from a fish, say mahi-mahi, red snapper, Chilean sea bass, bluefin tuna, etc., and then growing them in large volumes. We do that without genetic engineering, and we're using bioreactors to actually manufacture them in large volumes, and ultimately using extrusion or high density 3D bioprinting to actually manufacture a seafood product that's nutritionally, functionally, and analytically the same as conventional seafood, as crazy as that sounds. In fact, we did a demonstration event this past December, the first company in the world to demonstrate that our product had the same structural integrity as conventional seafood, meaning it can be heated the same, frying, sauteing, steaming, etc., or it could be marinated in an acidified brine or acidified solution such for a poke, ceviche, kimchi application, or prepared in a raw state. When you think about this in large scale, it looks a bit like a microbrewery that meets a conventional food processing facility. So this is an example of 3 processing lines. We're not obviously in this state today. We're still in this beginning stages, as this entire industry is around the world. This product is not yet under regulatory approval anywhere in the world at this point. But in the United States, the FDA and the USDA are working quite diligently with companies to actually bring this to market. And I know Israel, Asia, various parts of Europe also have regulatory strategies in place to actually bring these products to market in the very near term. And in fact, we're only about 1 year away from actually having a product in a test market here from our home in San Diego, Southern California. Why is this so important? And why is this pandemic relevant to what we're doing with cell-based seafood? First of all, as I mentioned, we have the most vulnerable supply chain, in my opinion, on the planet. And how is that really manifested? First, there's a global demand for seafood that's at an all-time high. Consumers are moving from red meat towards seafood due to the health benefits of seafood. Answer your question, per capita seafood consumption is now over 20 kilograms per year, so for the first time, and is expected to increase dramatically, especially as GDP increases in Asia. In fact, 83% of net new growth over the coming decade is expected to come from Asia. So there's a tremendous shift in demand. So here's the problem. It's our supply is continually being diminished. Overfishing, warming oceans, acidification, illegal fishing, environmental pollutants, algae blooms, a variety of factors that are known and unknown to us may in fact cause a dramatic reduction in our supply chain. In the meantime, the UN has estimated we need to produce at least 50% more food to feed the world in the next couple of decades. Furthermore, consumers are concerned about both external and internal issues when they think about seafood. Externally, if you will, they're thinking about not just the ocean health issues I mentioned, but labor practices, occupational safety, habitat damage, the destruction of coral reefs that comes from trawling, bycatch, the loss of life due to nets that could be as high as 30% or more, fish that are caught inadvertently and then thrown back, typically not alive. And for others, they're quite concerned about animal suffering as well. But of course, there's internal issues that are affecting people on top of that. Internal meaning I have personal challenges in food safety, personal health and wellness. With BlueNalu seafood, pregnant or nursing women can now not have the barriers that currently exist to consuming seafood. Today, they should have 0, 1, or 2 to 3 servings per week if they're in that condition. With the BlueNalu seafood, that inhibition no longer exists. Environmental pollutants, microplastics, product quality, fraud that occurs, toxins like ciguatera are all issues that are affecting our food supply and increasingly might be a challenge in the coming years. Furthermore, the level of food insecurity and price variability is dramatic. You're seeing here a graphic from FAO showing across the world how the price of seafood has continually escalated over the past couple of decades and is expected to continually increase and experiencing the tremendous price variances that exist, as you can see here. With BlueNalu, we're creating a stable supply chain. We're disrupting and displacing the current practice of shipping seafood, say 7,000 miles from Southeast Asia to say New York City, coupled with 30% bycatch and a 60% yield that's typically exists at the food service level, replacing that with 100% yielded product coming from a factory maybe 50 or 100 miles away, a total game changer for the planet. Why is this important for food security and the situation with COVID-19? It's about supporting the sustainability, health, and biodiversity of our oceans, and it's critical that we maintain that ecosystem for our own well-being on this planet due to the fact that oceans are the source of up to 85% of the oxygen we breathe, and oceans are also the primary regulator of our global climate, an important sink for greenhouse gases. BlueNalu has actually recently conducted food service operator research during the pandemic, and I want to focus on kind of this one area, operational benefits. As you're seeing, we represented this product with a variety of attributes that I just described, but what really came out quite heavily is due to the pandemic, there's even more concern about labor in the restaurant and the industry in particular, and the opportunity that BlueNalu presents with 100% yield, lower labor demands, a consistent and stable year-round supply with consistent quality and consistent pricing were absolutely very exciting and innovative, so much so that we have a number of early adopters, literally 100% positive feedback for our product when we launch it beginning late next year. As a result of COVID-19, this whole food industry has been totally disrupted, as all of you know. We're seeing headlines like you're seeing here, on top of the fact that at slaughterhouses and meat processing facilities, there were a number of issues with incidences of COVID-19 affecting the workforce, and UN, World Bank, and a number of nonprofits and NGOs have identified that we may in fact face double the number of people around the world who are facing acute food insecurity as a result of this pandemic. The world needs a new solution. On top of that, we're seeing a dramatic change in consumer behavior and an increase of venture capital in this space. And in fact, a recently released survey by International Food Information Council, their food and health survey showed that 85% of consumers have changed their buying habits. You heard Eli talk about the restaurant sector and how they've been affected, but we're also seeing that 85% of individuals are doing something differently, about 60% cooking more at home. And again, as I mentioned, the meat supply was dramatically affected during COVID, and we've seen an enormous growth in plant-based foods over the past couple of years, as you can see on this chart on the right. But the numbers have actually exceeded 200% growth during COVID. So there's an awful lot of people that introduced the plant-based foods over the past couple of years, in the past couple of months in particular. And cell-based foods, frankly, is quite an exciting opportunity that is, in fact, not include any processed ingredients, but is in fact the same animal product, the same allergens, the same great taste, but without the animal being harmed in the process. And in fact, as you can see in the bottom of the slide, cell-cultivated startups have defied COVID-19 panic with venture capital raises. BlueNalu is very fortunate to just come off a $20 million A round, and very, very excited that our crowd was a participant in that round as well. A.T. Kearney, the global accounting firm, has actually estimated that cultured cell-based meat products will grow at 41% annual growth rate between 2025 and 2040, representing 35% global market share over the next 2 decades. An enormous statistic. And novel plant-based products like Impossible and Beyond, for example, are projected to grow at 9% annual growth rate, representing 25% market share. And you're seeing conventional meat becoming unconventional, 90% in 2025, becoming 40% in 2040. We are on the front end of a global transformation of our meat supply. And we're excited now to be clearly a part of that. And there's my contact information for any questions you may have or any follow-ups you may have as well.